The second machine I ever owned was a Nintendo Entertainment System. I got this machine well after all my neighbors and friends had this game. I was a bit jealous, I'll be honest. I wanted to get into video games way before I did. I got into games a little late by most people's standards then, and frankly, certainly very late by today's standards, where kids get in when they're 2, 3, and 4. I got into video games when I was 11. That was when I was able to get my first machine, which was the aforementioned Master System. Excuse me, Sega's Master System. But I got an NES. This one I purchased myself. My first one was purchased through my folks, and I really appreciate that. But this is one that I wanted, and I had a hard time convincing my parents that it was good value because, of course, like many parents now and then, the question was, why do you need another machine? You already have a machine that plays video games. Well, I don't quite understand. Of course, and we now know that the difference between all these machines is wild and numerous. So anyway, I remember going to Bookman's, which was a big used used bookstore that also had magazines, posters, and video games available for purchase, used. It was really the first used experience I had. I got into video games from a used level very early. I went to KB occasionally, back when that was possible, but they were really pretty expensive. And the ones that were $20, which was my cap back then, because I was just babysitting. I wasn't raking in fat dollars here. It had to be cost effective. But I bought my NES. I borrowed half of the money from mom and dad, and then I paid them back. One of the few times my parents allowed me to pay them back for something. One of my first major purchases was my Nintendo Entertainment System for $40. And I think 1990, maybe 91. I think 90, maybe just shy of. Actually, kid across the street had a Genesis. I think it was 91. Anyway. The NES, as we all know, is it's a blockbuster. It revitalized video games as we know it. So, the cultural relevance of the Nintendo spans well beyond the music, movies, and plays of the time. Nintendo was its own cultural phenomenon. I think by the end of its lifespan, the Nintendo was in 1 in 4 American homes. That's just incredible. That's incredible. That's just I can't put it other. That's incredible. So the Nintendo really, I remember seeing news specials when I was a kid, and I didn't have a Nintendo at this point. Before this, there was just a lot of fervor. And I remember actually going to a friend's house, playing Super Mario Brothers, another church friend. You go to church and school as a kid. That's what you do. Another church friend, and I remember being pulled away from this game because we had to go. And I remember actually crying, not because I missed the game, because I knew I couldn't get one. And it was rough. But, wait it out, kids. If you want today's hotness, just wait it out, and it'll be cheaper used down the line. Or even new down the line. I did have an excellent library of games for the NES, though I will say I never grew particularly attached to it. Perhaps it's because I latched on too late, or because my Master System really kind of got the first out of me. And also the Master System had better graphics for the most part than the NES. Though games that were featured on both consoles were often very different. A lot of classics, for instance Double Dragon, which was on both consoles, was very different because it was programmed by different people. And it had a very different style, visual style, and appeal, really. Both very good, I would say, but quite different, and the NES does win out on it. Shinobi, different story. Grab the real version of that. It's on the Master System, of course. Afterburner and Hang On and so on, which were released by Tengen on the NES, but skip it. This is, of course, not a technical, sort of review. I'm not reviewing anything here. I'm just letting you know what's up. Excuse me. What was I going to say? Oh, so yes, the impact of the Nintendo was huge, and it really did kind of change culture's opinion of video games at the time, and it just lived on. It created the modern gamer. And it must be given props for that. Of course, looking at Nintendo games in 2008 eyes, many of these games have actually held up rather well. You can go to the Virtual Console. Of course, Nintendo releases their original, their NES classics through a number of platforms, including the Game Boy, Game Boy Advance, all these games for us to play well after the initial release. So we're actually still very familiar with Nintendo games. Perhaps that's why they've held up so well in many of our eyes, because we've played them since then, but long ago. You know what I'm saying? Games that were released 15, 20 years ago, we played, actually 10 years ago, when it was re-released for the first time, or the second time. So in 2008 eyes, I think nostalgia has served Nintendo well, and I think a lot of the reason their stuff holds up is because they really do have a lot of classic software, and they deserve the cred they get. You know, for all you Sega hardcore, and I'm a former hardcore Sega player, you just gotta hand it up to Nintendo. They released a solid bit of hardware that really outdid the Atari, which of course is what they were working out of. You know, they converted some of those gamers into Nintendo users, and they certainly one-upped it, you know, and for the price it worked out. It's unfortunate about their monopolistic approach to development, software development, but for third parties. But, you know, that happens. Sega learned. But, yeah. NES, check them out. $5 a piece on the Wii Virtual Console. In most cases, you're not going to go too far wrong. Although some you're going to go way wrong. But that happens.